And it's because I'm newly obsessed with her through my daughter, thank God.
Yeah.
Through my daughter, thank God.
I just love her. Now, if I'm you again, and I'm 28, I'm gonna try to date her with all my might. Are you not trying your hardest to marry her?
I don't see how this benefits him in any way. Certainly, if you are Kristen, there's only so much talk you can hear about how, I notice other people are attractive, which is a point of reality. Every married person is not a blind person. You could tell when somebody's attractive. But if your spouse kept coming to you all the time and being like, so-and-so is so hot, damn, if I could really turn back time, Sabrina Carpenter would be the girl I'd jump. It's like, at a certain point, even your desire to live in a realistic relationship in which everyone's able to express themselves to the fullest starts to dim a little bit when it's like, Dax, could you shut up about how you wish you were with everybody but me? That's how I'd feel if I were Kristen. Hello, how are you? Welcome to my channel. My name is Cheer Denise. Well, it's a Friday News Roundup, and there's lots of stories to talk about today. The one that bothered me the most is the one I'm going to start out with this week because... yesterday I did a whole segment on Harry and Meghan and the fact that they just live this entire life that is just one fake episode after another. And it's particularly annoying because you can clearly see that either they didn't do the homework that they needed to do to have a better outcome, or else they really think we're so dumb that we'll buy whatever lie they're telling us. But nothing in their life is real. And I think one of the things that is the most particularly annoying is when we see celebrities doing something that is 10 out of 10 fake. Completely and totally Clownville. And they think we're some kind of peasants wandering around just so excited to see what the famous rich people are doing. What are you guys doing over there? Oh, okay, I buy that. We're not stupid. So this week, when we were splashed in the face with the PR for the new Wuthering Heights movie, we saw Margot Robbie and Jacob Elordi coming out trying to spin a tale to us as though between the two of them as actors, they have experienced a love they have never known. That this film brought something up in them that was almost animalistic. The lust they felt for each other, the all-consuming desire to be in each other's presence, to be one with each other. They'd never felt anything like it. And they're still just awash with the hormones and the lust of it all. Meanwhile, Margot Robbie's married. The original scandal about this movie was that people thought that it was a poor depiction of what the book was actually about. That, the book is not this triple X love story, full of frightening, dangerous loves where people are being subsumed into each other's identities and all of this. That's people were like, this is gross. It's like the story of Heathcliff and Catherine wasn't like this. I don't like whatever I'm seeing being depicted. I don't like this. I do think that there is room for somebody to take the story of Wuthering Heights and sort of elevate those elements of the story and be more explicit about what I think is a story about two people who had broken ideas of passion for each other. Because if you'll recall, the book is about how Heathcliff and Catherine have this all-consuming love for each other behind closed doors. But then in the public, Catherine's like, Heathcliff, you are only an orphan who's brought into my father's house, so I do need to marry for status. Sorry. Then she goes and marries a guy and it breaks Heathcliff's heart. He runs off for 3 years and then he comes back and, exacts revenge on everybody. And in the end, he starts seeing visions of Catherine who died in childbirth, and he just wants his soul to go back and mingle with the ghost of hers that continues to come and haunt him. It is a story of pretty jacked up mental states. Nobody's doing well in the book. So if you wanted to then make a movie about how nobody's really doing well mentally, that tracks. But the real problem now is the fact that Margot Robbie and Jacob Elordi are trying to get you excited about the movie by pretending that they had an affair on set. But it's so clearly all just an extension of the movie. And I am so tired of this. I feel like we're doing Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo 2.0 here. on the one hand, I am like, okay, well, at least we can name what it is you guys are feeling for each other. With Ariana Grande and Cynthia, I was like, what are you guys doing? You know, at least over here, Jacob and Margot are trying to pretend that they were in some kind of affair, but also as the characters in the movie. So like they became so one with the characters that the only other thing they could feel for each other was obsessive passion. And Margot has been like, I would just wander around on set, and if I couldn't find him, I felt like a lost child without her blanket. When he touched me, when he put his arms around my waist, I just went weak in the knees. Now, I mean, honestly, who wouldn't? I mean, I've always thought that being an actress would be a really dangerous business. I can tell you right now, I'd fall in love with every guy I acted with. I mean, I don't think my marriage would survive. And not because my husband's not an amazing person, he is. But I don't know how you enter into a character and you guys are being all flirty and there's all this chemistry and you're feeling all these things as the character, but you're supposed to not really feel it in real life. Like, I would be incapable of it. The arguments and the fights that my husband and I would have over my behavior on set. And he would be right to feel that way. I mean, I'm just telling you what I really think would be true. I just think that if I were supposed to get in the headspace and really feel and really love and really be passionate with this other man, like, I just don't see how that goes well for your marriage. Okay, but maybe there are people who can do that. Maybe there are really people who can turn on and off a switch where 1 minute you're making out with a guy who's being like amazing and charming and doing all the right things like in the movie. And then you just get off the set and like that was a character and you were too and it meant nothing. But if that is the case, then how are you going to do a whole press tour based on the fact that you can't get out of character with this guy? I mean, Margot Robbie's husband, are you okay? Are you alive? What closet have they locked you into to keep you from busting up out of the place and being like, hello, Margot, what happened to our vows of faithfulness? You know? I just think it's like distasteful. I mean, if they had really had an affair, as I saw somebody say, actors and actresses who have affairs on set don't look at each other. They don't talk to each other. It's just kind of like, you know, let's hope nobody noticed anything. Let's hope nobody walked into our trailer when we were, you know, practicing our scenes. You know, it's just so obvious that they're trying to sell us this unbelievable passion. Margot Robbie's like, I had my friends come and have a screening of the movie, and my gosh, when I tell you my friends were foaming at the mouth for Jacob. I mean, Heathcliff, they would have absolutely devoured him if he were to walk into that room. I mean, it is just so hot and heavy. The feelings are almost animalistic when you watch this movie. It's like, Margot, please, okay? I mean, I want a movie to be good on its own without us having to extend the movie into the PR of it all, you know? I really just want a movie to be the movie, and then I want the press tour to be the actors talking about the movie they were in regular clothes that aren't supposed to be an extension of the themes of the film. I want them to remember that they were playing a character before and not to go on and on and on and on as though, you know, you just can't get past this person, this world. The reality is that probably there's a lot of people who are in movies about great passionate loves or obsessions with each other who, in their innermost heart, maybe do struggle to get out of the character that they were with that person. I mean, that's why there's so many people who have affairs on sets. But to try to make us believe or to bring us into this false fantasy with these exaggerated descriptions of unbelievable, almost indescribable love. It's like, stop. Just stop. This is so phony baloney. It's annoying. And it diminishes what they consider our intellect. Believe me, we can go in and totally love a movie without you having to sell me on some sordid love affair you guys were having. It's totally disrespectful of the reality, Margot, that you're married. You know, it's like, I'm sorry, I just can't get into it with you. Now, if you weren't married, Margot, and this was just like a tale in which you found your passionate love while you were playing Catherine and he was playing Heathcliff, you know, maybe we could all get excited for you. Oh, isn't that interesting? You guys really fell in love on this movie? That's fun. But when you're married, it's just like hugely disrespectful. Also, it's all so cliche. I was weak at the knees when he put his arm around my waist. All my friends are frothing in the mouth for Jacob. It's like, what are these phrases? Anyway, I'm just tired of it. I I want these actors to just do regular press tours. I'm tired of the extension. Comment below if you think this is annoying. The constant need to get us hyped about the movie by trying to create a false reality. Please. Okay. Somebody who feels like they're living a false reality, but he actually is really trying to become an adult in this world, I guess, is Spencer Pratt. Now, way back at the beginning of last year, when I was starting to do these Friday News Roundups, Spencer Pratt was featured prominently because his house had burned down in the fires. You'll remember last January, there was like huge fires that burned up a ton of Los Angeles. Anyway, he was really upset because of the way that was handled. But then as a way to raise money, his wife, who had a very nominal singing career about 15 years ago, maybe even 20 years ago, had decided to re-release the songs. And then she was like touring and doing some, local events. And he was a super fan of hers. And so he was making a big splash on social media promoting his wife. But then along with all of that was his continual upset about the fires and what had happened to his community and what had happened to all his friends and to their community, and just feeling like the city had a lot to answer for. And he was making some good points, honestly. Well, in all of that furor, he decided that, if the current mayor was so incapable, maybe he better stop complaining and step up and do the job himself. Spencer's running for mayor of Los Angeles. That seems intensely strange to me. But when you look at the clown show that has been running the place, is it that much crazier that Spencer would be like, I would like to help myself to this? Another individual who is looking to run the show is that Abrams girl from 16 and Pregnant, the one who became a porn star and got famous doing all manner of disgusting filth. What was her name again? I know her last name was Abraham. Anyway, she's also trying to run for mayor. So when I tell you that there is no shortage of people who think they can do a job that seems almost impossible given the politics of the situation. Okay, but the reason that I bring this up isn't because I'm like, oh, that's crazy, Spencer, because there's lots of celebrities who have eventually decided that, maybe they should run for public office, especially if that celebrity is kind of struggling with their career options. It's like, okay, I'll go into public office. Okay, well, at least you have some name recognition on your side. But conjoined with his attempt to become mayor, he's also decided to write a book, and maybe to highlight who he is as a person and why he may be able to actually elicit some change in their environment. So he's written this book about who he used to be, and I think he's trying to let you know that he's not really a buffoon. He's actually a person who's masterminded his entire existence, and that he should get a little respect for the fact that he's actually been the one at the helm, even if it seemed like he was sort of living a life as a consequence to the reality TV show he was in as a young guy. Not because somehow everything he has is what he actually wanted all along. I don't know, but I'm dragging this out. I'm finally getting to the point. The point is in that discussing his book that he has written and discussing his run for mayor of Los Angeles, he was on the CBS morning show. And I just thought that the way they talked to him was really unprofessional, to say the least. Spencer comes on there and he has written a book and he has been running for mayor, and they ask him, so tell us a little bit about why you were such a douche canoe back in the day when you were on that show, The Hills. Why were you such a douche canoe? A douche canoe? Is that a term that we're using for people now on the CBS morning show? The Sunday morning show is now asking people why in their youth they were such a douche canoe. Are we adults? Oprah's best friend sitting there asking this young man about his douche canoery. And I'm just sitting there wondering, when did we become so horrific as a species? These aren't questions to ask. You might think he might not be the best candidate for Los Angeles mayor, but he is running in that capacity. And if you don't like the way he behaved as a young man on a very constructed reality TV show, then maybe ask him in a sober-minded, professional way how his background as the villain of a TV show should instill trust in people today. But to ask somebody why they were once a douche canoe is the worst way I think I've ever heard the question asked, why should we trust you when what we know of you is not very reputable? Why is everyone such a failure? What kind of questions are these? You know? It's a legitimate question, why should we trust you? But should we phrase it that way? Anyway, his response was, I don't think I was enough of a douche canoe. He did have an interesting point, though. He said if I was more of a villain, perhaps the show would have done better. You know, maybe I wasn't mean enough. It was all a part I was playing anyway. And he goes on to say that the characters from Jersey Shore were all of them crazy as a loons. And the show lives on in pop culture history. And maybe if he had been a worse character and had asked everybody else to sort of hype up the drama and the antics, maybe the show would have had a longer running presence in pop culture history.
So there were so many times where you were just really a douche canoe on that show. And you just seemed to amp it up, amp it up, amp it up. Was there ever a time when you got home and you'd go, I just can't believe I just did that or I just said that? Or were you aware of how you were coming across at the time?
Oh, I was well aware.
You were?
Yeah.
Okay.
And if anything, I probably should have been a bigger douche canoe. You know,
really?
Yeah, I mean, look at, you know, the show ended and Jersey Shore is still airing, still a success. And I always wanted to be part of a franchise and a team like the Jersey Shore cast. So I think the rest of the cast should have all tried to been bigger douche canoes.
Because
he's not wrong. You know, and the truth is he knew that he was playing a character. And we all knew that The Hills was a scripted show. It might have been ad-libbing, but okay, today you guys are going to ad-lib this fight. We'll tell you what the fight's about. You know, it wasn't real life. So he could comfortably say, yeah, I didn't play a big enough villain. Because he doesn't believe he is one. I don't think Spencer's a villain either now. But let me just say, I think he's a passionate person who just has had what appears to be a fairly easy life. So some of the tears he weeps and the crying that he has exposed. Like, I don't do well with men who want my respect, but then spend a lot of their time crying about things like, my wife's song has finally become #1. Like, I want you to support your wife completely, but for you to film yourself crying, then edit that video for social media, it does make it hard for me to want to put the trust of a city in your hands, because it just feels like very little turns on the waterworks for you. I don't know what you're going to do when real problems arise. I think that's my only problem with Spencer. But it isn't that I don't think he's a genuinely invested man in the things he cares about. I think he cares a lot about his wife. I think he cares a lot about people knowing the truth about things. And honestly, he has gained my respect on some of the videos that he's made, sort of disclosing some of just the fraudulent behavior that he has seen from some of the politicians in his area. So, you know, I do appreciate that he's trying to make change. Instead of just complaining, he's trying to be the answer. So I appreciate that about Spencer. And I think that he, even if you think he's kind of silly, deserved more respect than to be asked, why were you once such a douche canoe? Super unprofessional. Okay, speaking about people who are trying to change the narrative, Kanye's come out to apologize for being such an anti-Semite. Thank you, Kanye. You know, I'm not Jewish, but, you know, if I were Jewish, I would just really appreciate anybody who had made such a name for themselves by being so rabidly anti-Semitic. I would really respect the fact that he bought out an entire page of the Wall Street Journal to say, I have been mentally unwell for years, and in my mental anguish, I gravitated toward a symbol that exposed all the hate that I was feeling in my heart towards myself and towards life and towards everything, and it became my symbol of hatred. I think that Kanye was in a place where he just was in such howling anguish that he gravitated towards the thing that he thought could express the anger and the angst and the feelings of just horrible injustice that he was feeling. Misplaced though they may have been, he was feeling that the world was aligned against him, and the only symbol that he knew of that exposed the feelings of a world aligned against you was the swastika. I make no apologies for why he did that. I'm not trying to help us to understand the heart of the villain. The villain was being villainous, 100%. But I do appreciate that he would come out and try to make an attempt to explain why he would gravitate towards that, and then to say that he is deeply sorry for having done that. If I were a Jewish person, I would appreciate that. Now, of course, there are always the cynics who want to come out and be like, he's just doing this for our PR. Oh, you know what? Sometimes, even if it is just for PR, it's a good thing for people to come out and say, I was 1,000% incorrect in the way I expressed myself. I looked ridiculous. I was acting evilly, and I'm sorry. Even if that is for PR, we're all better for having heard it. We're all better for having heard it. Okay, somebody who continues to just drive this train straight into the darkness is Dax Shepard. You guys, it pains me to have to every week be like, Dax, pull it back, man. I don't think he's doing well. I don't know. Lately, he's just saying a lot of things that don't make sense. And it could just be that I think there's a trend right now towards micromanaging all the words that come out of his mouth. And the public's like, oh, Dax. But I'm kind of a little bit surprised at some of the things he says, especially because he does love to talk about all of his therapy and how he's become enlightened and how he's really working on himself as a human being. And I'm like, you say that, but then you say other things too that make me just feel like, are you enlightened as a human being, or are we doing a thing where we've come so far into the therapy world that we are now busted up again? I got a lot of crooked thinking. Then I went to therapy and they straightened me out, but then I stayed in therapy too long. And now I'm thinking so constantly and continually about all the things that I'm now busted up again. Anyway, I don't know exactly where this phrase fits into that timeline, except for the fact that it's just weird. He had a young man on his show recently, a comedian, and he asked him, because he's done some work with Sabrina Carpenter, he asks him, so you are trying your hardest to date Sabrina, right? Because if I'm 28-year-old you, I'm trying my hardest to date her. You are trying to marry her, aren't you?
I'm newly obsessed with her through my daughter, thank God.
I'm newly obsessed with her through my daughter, thank God.
I went and saw Sabrina Carpenter a month ago with my daughter. Sure. I just love her. Yeah. Monica's been making fun of me. I think Short and Sweet came out like a month ago, and I'm just obsessed with the album.
It's been out for a bit.
I think she did another one.
No way.
There's another one since then actually out.
So you're pals with her. Are you pals?
Yeah, I would say we're pals for sure.
You're pal. How did that start?
She's down. She's down to clown. She's down to think of something funny. She's an actress, obviously.
That's why I've become obsessed with her, because she was hosting SNL, and of course my daughters are so excited, so I watch it with her, and I'm like, my God, she's fantastic. And then while we're watching the episode, I'm now Wikipediaing her. I'm like, oh, right, she was an actor on Disney forever. She was an actor before she was a singer. Of course she's great. Like, I'm having all these realizations. Now, if I'm you, again, and I'm 28, I'm going to try to date her with all my might. Are you not trying your hardest to marry her?
I'm in a relationship.
You
now.
are?
Yeah, I'm in a relationship with a Dominican girl. She's an architect.
An architect.
She's unreal. She went to Yale. She's
wow.
She's unreal.
Okay, so
but
all right.
But Sabrina's awesome. Yeah. And she's really funny.
Dax, why are you so verbose on your desires to get in bed with this, in comparison to you, child? Sabrina Carpenter is like 4 feet tall. So even if she was your age, she looks like a child. But anyway, the reality is she is but a youth compared to Dax Shepard. And he's over here living his best fantasy life with this young man sitting across from him. And the other guy's like, well, I actually have a very sexy girlfriend. She's a Dominican. Ivy League educated, incredibly intelligent. I mean, I'm set, but Sabrina's a nice girl, and it's kind of like, oh, ouch, Sabrina. It's almost like he's like, it's Ivy League educated, super hot Dominican girl, or the slutty singer who makes up crazy lyrics and looks like somebody's fantasy of a grown-up JonBenet. I mean, if you're Sabrina, you're sitting there feeling a little bit hurt by this guy who rejects her in such a way that it's like you can't really point a finger and say he said anything wrong. He's just like, I'm already dating a really awesome girl, and goes on to list how she's so awesome. But Sabrina's a fun girl. I don't want to be fun girl. Not in that comparison. Anyway, the whole point of the conversation, and the whole reason I bring this up, is Dax is constantly talking about how he fantasizes almost exclusively about people who are not his wife. I just don't see how this benefits him in any way. certainly if you are Kristen, there's only so much talk you can hear about how, I notice other people are attractive, which is a point of reality. Every married person is not a blind person. You could tell when somebody's attractive. But if your spouse kept coming to you all the time, being like, so-and-so is so hot, damn, if I could really turn back time, Sabrina Carpenter would be the girl I'd jump. It's like, at a certain point, even your desire to live in a realistic relationship in which everyone's able to express themselves to the fullest starts to dim a little bit when it's like, Dax, could you shut up about how you wish you were with everybody but me? That's how I'd feel if I were Kristen. I just think it's a little disrespectful. At one point, it is respectful to be completely honest with your spouse. But can we agree that there is a point when radical honesty becomes a little bit like, could you shut your trap? Whatever thoughts you have rattling around in your head, I need you to keep those to yourself sometimes. And not be asking this young man across from you what his thoughts are on trying to nail down Sabrina Carpenter. Anyway, maybe I'm making a mountain out of a molehill. I just think Dax Shepard is just a little bit loose-tongued in his pursuit of radical honesty. Okay. Now, here's a story that is actually quite sober. So if you are... typically I don't do trigger warnings, but on this particular story, I would just like to say that if anybody has ever harmed you or hurt you or taken advantage of you, this might not be the story for you. So you may want to employ that fast forward button. But the story came out recently. It is about a woman named Brooke Nevels. Brooke Nevels was working for NBC. And she has written a memoir in which she was taken advantage of by Matt Lauer. Now, we know that during the whole Me Too movement, he really fell from grace. But I don't know if it was just me not listening to the news or what, but I did not know this girl's full story. And she says that she was nobody's perfect victim, but she would like to now come out and tell her whole story about what happened the night that she and he had a one-night stand. I use that term loosely because if her description of events are to be believed, it would not be a one-night stand by anybody's typical definition. I would say that she was leaped upon by a rabid wolf. She tells a story about how she and the crew were in Russia because they were filming the Olympics and they were broadcasting the Olympics and obviously discussing the Olympics, and she was there. And she was with another broadcaster, female broadcaster. They were together. They were having drinks. They were sort of celebrating because this was the first time a female had been the main broadcaster for the Olympics. And as they were sitting there having drinks, Matt Lauer came and joined them. And Brooke doesn't seem to have been bothered by his presence initially. In fact, she patted the seat beside her and invited him to sit down. Now, obviously, if this major talent walks in and wants to join you, there's probably feelings of excitement. This really famous guy is coming and I get to join and the big kids are here. This feeling like, maybe you'd finally arrived. You're sitting here at a table with really famous people in an industry that you are, beginning to climb the ladder in. So she is not repulsed by him. And they begin to party and they are throwing back the vodkas and they are being sloppy in their behavior. I think anybody would describe it as being rather sloppy in their behavior. However, and this is why I think she describes herself as nobody's perfect victim, because there are people who would say, hey, you know what you need to do? You need to not put yourself in those circumstances. Anyway, Brooke, the girl in the story, says that she wasn't a perfect victim because, as she sees it, she shouldn't have been drinking like this with this guy. But, and I think we can all agree, a but is appropriate here because even if she had done what she did, drinking to the point of being quite drunk, it doesn't excuse the fact that this other guy takes advantage of her, which he did. Matt Lauer and her go back to her hotel room. She describes a scenario the next day where she wakes up caked in blood. Her bed sheets are covered in blood. Her underwear is covered in blood. And she says that for the next several days, she could hardly walk, she could hardly sit, and she was in excruciating pain. What? Like, I don't know what I thought was happening with Matt Lauer, but I thought that it wasn't that. I thought that if somebody had blown the whistle on him and he had maybe I mean, this wouldn't be great, but like slapped some girl's butt or something, like did something that was just distasteful, not a sin, but just like, oh, don't do that, you nasty pig, that kind of behavior. I had no idea that the reason he fell from grace was that this girl had been what appears to be brutally taken advantage of, to say it in the nicest terms possible. To wake up in a pool of blood? You can't walk or sit for days? Like, we're not angry enough at this man, I think is my conclusion here, if this is all to be believed. Now, of course, his camp's coming out and being like, recollections vary, type of talk, but I don't know. I mean, if that girl has any medical evidence to support the story that she's telling, that is earth-shattering for her, And then, of course, who is she going to call? And that was the other problem. Who does she call to say, I just woke up in a state of absolute torture? And she's going to report Matt Lauer. She's like a nobody compared to him. She's in Russia. They're filming the Olympics. There's a, not a skeleton crew, but, it's not everybody who might have been able to help her, say if they were stateside, is available to her. At least it's not how she felt. I think that the environment made her feel isolated and all this. Now, granted, there are always two sides to every story, and so I do support the fact that we have not heard his version of events. But if her version is even 25% true, her condition is just inexplicably horrifying. So I don't know. We may be revisiting this story if we can get more word from Matt Lauer about what happened to Brooke and what was the circumstance. There are obviously certain situations in which a woman might find herself in a pool of blood, but she certainly didn't suggest that she was on her cycle. So I'm just saying we don't have all the facts here as far as we weren't witnesses to this situation. We weren't witnesses to this crime, so I don't know exactly what had happened that would have led her to be in that condition. But if you can't sit or walk for days afterwards, that's not just because you were engaged in some interesting behavior during your female cycle. Do you know what I'm saying? So if there's anybody out there who's like, well, maybe she just started her, no, I don't think that has anything to do with it. Okay, let's move on. Our last story is one that I meant to talk about yesterday, but I forgot to fit it in. And that is about Meghan Markle. You guys, have you heard that she was trying to get in on Valentino's funeral? What is the matter with Meghan Markle? Why does she think that somebody's funeral is a networking situation? That's the way she looked at it. Meghan Markle has never been known to be a huge wearer of Valentino. She's more Balenciaga. And she has never been a person who has consistently discussed or gushed over his fashion. It's not like Gwyneth Paltrow. Gwyneth Paltrow is like, I wouldn't say a slave of Valentino, but, she's well incorporated in his brand. That's not the case for Meghan Markle. And she wanted an invitation to this as though it were like a wedding. Somebody's dead. Are we struggling to comprehend, Meghan? We don't just get invitations to designers' funerals like it's some big event. But I mean, there are people in these worlds who are so trashy that they would be doing some networking and looking for work at a funeral. From what I understand, she did not receive the invitation. But can you imagine being so tawdry and so lame that you would be angling for an invitation? If you get to go, you get to go. If you don't, you don't. You don't ask around. So how do we get to, whose palm do I need to grease? Who do I need to, what do we need to do? It's so embarrassing. Meanwhile, to continue the embarrassing trend that is Meghan Markle's life, yet another influencer has come out to say that she was gifted a candle from As Ever. She didn't buy it. It was sent to her and it didn't have a wick. Who is working for Meghan who's sending all of these people wickless candles? Like, at this point, I'm almost like, somebody is doing this on purpose. Meghan can't be this bad. Meghan's candles cannot be this horrible that more than one influencer is receiving a candle that does not have a wick. Now, you guys know that we talked about Link Lorne, and he had purchased a candle himself and it didn't have a wick in it. And then this other influencer, I think her name is Dana Bowling, she received a candle as a gift but it didn't have a wick. I'm not saying she had anything to do with why it didn't have a wick. I'm saying the person who sent it to her, I find that suspicious. I feel like somebody did that on purpose, having heard about Link's situation. And then there's a third influencer, and I apologize for not remembering who it is. I saw it in the comments. Somebody was listing all the people who have announced that they received a wickless candle. At this point, I'm like, sabotage is in the mix, right? Like, I feel like if I were Meghan Markle, I would want to come out with a statement or something and say, I've seen a trend of people talking about how their candles don't have wicks. If you don't purchase this candle from our website, I'm concerned about the quality of what you're receiving. Because Dana Bowling said that her candle came from the Netflix offices, and they had a bunch of these candles on hand. You know, I think that there's a Netflix shop that you can purchase as ever products from, so it feels like that should be valid. It seems to me that there should be some validity to whatever products they're selling. I'm sure they are as ever products, but coming from the Netflix office, are there people who are upset with you, Meghan, who might find it funny, hilarious, laughable to send a wickless candle to Dana, who can then talk to all her people about it and be like, look what I got from Meghan Markle. It's getting us suspicious at this point. If there was like one or two candles that had gone out and all of these that didn't have a wick, I would say, where's quality control? But for it to always be people who have influences and audiences who are receiving candles who don't have wicks, somebody's sabotaging this or something. I don't know of anybody who has bought that candle on purpose who has received a candle that was actually capable of being burned. Everybody who has discussed having a candle doesn't have a wick in their candle. Is anybody getting a candle that is functioning? At this point, I almost want to buy one and be like, what will I get in the mail? No one's going to send me anything on purpose that's broken. And so that's why I feel like it would be a better, I think it would work better for me to buy a candle and to see what happened when it was sent to me, because nobody knows who I am. So then we might actually see what people are receiving. Link Lauren or Dana Bowling, they have much bigger platforms. So if there was somebody who had a axe to grind against Meghan, filling their order with something that doesn't work, that's a story. But if I order a candle, no one's going to send me anything but just grab a candle, box it up, and send it to that girl. I have questions. I really do. I don't understand what's going on there. All right. Well, that is it for today. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. I so appreciate it. I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you again on Monday. Bye.